Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Joined the League of Villains. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Razor. So, a raid is taking place in a few days, Razor growled. Why yes, the thug she was holding against the wall stuttered. The heroes are planning on trying to rescue the captured students, along with anyone else they come across. Razor narrowed her eyes and deepened her glare. The thug started sweating even more than before. If looks could kill a person, then he'd definitely be dead by now. He was just out on a small job when he encountered Razor and Stain. Unfortunately for him, the pair had been looking for a member of Hades to get the latest intel. If you're lying to me, Razor warned him softly. I'm not. I swear, the thug replied frantically. He was sweating buckets now. He knew what Razor was capable of and she would do to him, but he also knew what Shiro or Nico would do to him if he talked, which he just did. Either way, he was dead. I wouldn't lie to you about this. Razor deepened her glare, causing the thug to become more nervous. Disgusting, Stain muttered. Razor glanced at him with an annoyed expression. What Stain? You've seen me intimidate assholes like this before. Why is this time so different? It's not, Stain retorted. He then pointed at the thug's lower section. It's what he's doing now that disgusts me. Razor backed up slightly and saw that the thug was, in addition to sweating uncontrollably, was urinating his own pants. Ag, you, Razor muttered disgustedly. Why didn't you say that before? Now I'm gonna have to wash my outfit. Or better yet burn it and get a new one. Who knows how long that will take. Stain shrugged, not bothered to answer. Razor resisted, with immense difficulty, the urge to punch her friend square in the jaw. She returned her attention to the thug who cowered at her gaze. That's all I know, I swear. Tears were now coming out of his eyes. Please, I'm begging you. Don't kill me. He was a villain, sure. And he knew he had done bad things. But even still he didn't want to die. Not yet. Razor eyed him. I believe you. And I won't kill you. That would only make Shiro and his right-hand bitch suspicious. No one barring certain individuals know I'm still in Japan, and I'd like to keep it that way until the time is right. The thug looked relieved and began crying even harder, much to Razor's chagrin. However, I can't have you going back and telling Shiro you saw me so. She took out a tiny sphere that was the shape of marble, and shoved it in the thug's face close to his nose. A small white gas was released, and upon inhaling the thug's eyes whitened for a second before falling unconscious. I'll give you a chance of not dying, right now. What did you do to him? Stain asked, surprised that Razor wasn't going to kill him. I gave him a small dosage of amnesia, Razor informed him. Anything that happened an hour ago he won't remember. Kai's butler created this little stuff in case we ever needed, or wanted, to escape without any unnecessary bloodshed. Stain didn't argue with her. While he had heard of her group, he had never been to their base of operations. He knew they were resourceful though, very resourceful. He also knew that members such as Razor had a high success rate when performing a job of whatever nature. Rarely was there a failure in this group, and without good reason. Alright, let's move. I need to make a phone call, Razor declared. She glanced downward. And then I need to burn my clothes and take a shower. Let's move, Stain. They moved to an abandoned building where Razor took out her phone. She quickly dialed a number and held the phone to her ear. Who are you calling? Stain asked out of pure curiosity. Butler. Or more specifically, the asshole behind a desk I take orders from, Razor informed him. She waited for about a minute before someone finally answered. On the other end, a British voice. Good evening. Who may I ask is calling? Razor sighed, somewhat relieved at hearing the voice of someone she could stand. It's me, Sebastian, Razor answered. Miss Razor, Sebastian said, his voice more alert. What happened to you? After all, for one's defeat and incarceration, and later death, you never returned and you vanished off the grid. It isn't like you not to return after a mission is completed and give a report. Razor didn't contradict him. While it was true, she normally returned straight away and gave a report. On the rarest of occasions, went somewhere else after a job. I'm still in Japan, looking after a few things, since they especially seem to be heating up, Razor explained. I'm gonna assume you've heard about the mass kidnapping that happened yesterday in Japan. Well, Hades and his bastard of a leader Shiro are behind it all. And me, being the violent, bitchy, ass-kicking, yet somewhat caring and to a certain extent nice person I am, have decided to get involved because as we speak, Shiro, that dick, is plotting the revenge and death of my student for stabbing out his eye and escaping. Basically, I'm staying because I want to stop him from dying either by killing Shiro or helping the kid invade Hades, and then smash to pieces from the inside. There was complete silence on the other end. Sebastian understood what she said, he understood the depth of it, and what she was planning. However, there was one detail he just couldn't quite understand, or rather process. You have a student? He replied incredulously. Since when? And why? In all the years he had known Razor, she had never once taught anything to anyone, not even the younger members of Butler. He even remembered her clearly saying she didn't take on apprentices, because anyone apprenticed to her would likely die within 3 days. That, and she said she didn't play well with others. All for one's orders, she replied simply. I started training the kid between 1 and 2 months after he joined because he nearly died a couple of times out doing his job. I wasn't happy, but he didn't give me much of a choice. Surprisingly enough, the kid didn't die after 3 days of my version of an intense workout. Sebastian's sweat dropped knowing what that involved. He's kept up pretty well, I must say. He survived the pit of hell when I threw him in. Sebastian's blood froze. Stain's jaw dropped in complete shock and horror. The pit of hell, Sebastian stuttered. He was in there. Yup, for 4 whole days without food, drink, or rest, Razor beamed. An angelic smile of pride flashed across her face. Stain could have sworn he saw a halo above her head. Can you believe it? I was so impressed. After that, I started teaching him proper fighting techniques. Sebastian and Stain both felt sweat creeping upon them. Deku has survived in that all on his own, and for 4 days. Neither of them realized it, but at that exact moment, they were both thinking the same thing. That poor boy. I can't imagine how scared he was after that. My pride for him aside, when the heroes fail at raiding Hades' base, it's only a matter of time before the bastard moves onto to him. Knowing Deku, he'll probably consider running first, but realize it's pointless and try to fight back. To do that he'll need a team, and I want to be part of it, Razor explained. However, I need all the information you have, and will acquire on Hades to help him properly. Sebastian didn't answer her immediately. He took a minute to evaluate her words and what she was asking of him. However, certain procedures had to be followed before he could do anything. I'll need to run it by the boss first, he informed her. You know that, right? Razor scowled. Unfortunately, yes. And I know how that dick will be about it. However, tell him it's very important. Not just because Shiro's involved, but Shino as well. What? Sebastian shouted alarmed. Shino. Shino tension. Butler's one and only angel of death, Razor confirmed. Sebastian was confused for so many reasons. Why was Shino, of all people, involved? The last he heard from her, she was on a mission in China, and he hadn't heard from her since. Now he was hearing she was involved with Hades. How, and why? He asked, his voice trailing off. Shiro managed to capture her and made her one of his special slaves with a bomb in her neck. Believe me, I was surprised to see her there. Especially since she's not an easy one to get the jump on, Razor answered. So, what will you do now? I'm sure our asshole of a boss will want her back, considering everything she's contributed. There was silence on the other end of the line. I'll see what I can do. That was good enough for Razor. Good. Oh, and Sebastian, if he needs some persuasion, tell him I will shove a penknife, a dagger, a sword, and then a battle axe straight up his stupid ass in that exact order. I'm sure it will be difficult, but I'll manage somehow. Acknowledge. He hung up. Razor turned to her friend. Let's move, Stain, she said. Things are about to get messy around her. And with Deku, I have a feeling he's started remembering his trauma. Started? Stain murmured confusedly. Razor nodded. When he was in Hades, he saw things, he did things, he experienced things. Things no one would or should ever experience. To make him cope with it, All for One used a quirk to repress his memories. However, it isn't permanent. If it isn't constantly applied, then his memory will come back like it is now. Stain didn't know why, but he felt nervous about the answers he was receiving. Like what? He asked reluctantly. Razor eyed him with a neutral expression. You remember when I asked you not to kill anyone when you took him out for training? Stain nodded, not understanding why she was bringing it up. I didn't do it because he would have blood on his hands. Oh no, it was too late for that. I did it because I thought him seeing you killed the way you do would trigger something. A memory. And that would have led to a full-on panic attack. Stain's blood froze. He wasn't sure if he'd heard properly, Razor. Or maybe he just couldn't register it. Too late for that. That meant only one thing. Who in Hades did he kill? He murmured nervously. Razor stared at him emotionlessly. A higher-ranking member named Graphene. From what Deku told me, Graphene attacked him and several children because he saw them as a vulnerability to Hades. A fight broke out between the two of them, which Graphene had the upper hand. The fight came to an end when Deku managed to send Graphene into the water below. Due to the guy's quirk, he started to sink, and well, he couldn't exactly swim either. Stain had a flurry of thoughts running through his mind. It was in self-defense, sure, but why didn't he just explain that? There were witnesses as well. They could have added to Deku's defense. It was self-defense, sure, but Shiro didn't believe him. Graphene was one of the few people he trusted, and vice versa. He was also incredibly so. He found it hard to believe that quirkless Deku managed to kill him all by himself. So, instead of looking through his memories, he subjected him to intense torture, both physical and psychological. That wasn't the only reason he did it though, Razor explained. Stain contemplated what other reasons the man could have for torturing Deku, other than killing one of his generals. Shiro did it to break Deku, to make him more submissive and obedient to him. He did it to bend his will into becoming a more definite slave, she continued. He also did it to get to me. Aizawa remembered being confined in a room while being forced to watch videos of Izuku being tortured. Outwardly, she showed no emotion, but inwardly she was horrified. Kyoku has seen her memories, so she could tell that she, though she wouldn't have admitted it, cared about Izuku, and so hurting him was a way to hurt her. Shiro had expressed an interest in her abilities before and wanted her to join, but like everyone who had done this, she, being her usual self, told him to fuck off. So, let me see if I got this right. Deku killed this graphene because he was defending himself and several children, then got tortured as a punishment to break him and you. Razor nodded. Stain looked away. I can see why you would want him to forget. Taking life for the first time is not something to be taken lightly. It's actually pretty scarring. Stain was a killer, a murderer, he knew that all too well. Despite his ideals and his crusade, he knew that was what he was, and he didn't shy away from it. He had accepted it. However, his lifestyle, what he did, he would never wish it upon another person. Even if he hated that person, he would never wish for it. This life involved constantly staining your hands with blood, something you could never wash away no matter how hard you tried. It was sick and unpleasant, but sometimes it had to be done. However, he would never wish it upon someone else. It wasn't the first time actually, Razor admitted. Stain's face snapped back to hers. What? I said it wasn't the first time. Deku had done it once before, and under similar circumstances, Razor confirmed. Tell me something, Stain, have you ever heard of a group called Tenem? Stain's face twisted into one of disgust, answering Razor's question. There wasn't a villain or hero who didn't know about Tenem. They were infamous in the underworld, and of all the villain groups that had existed, they were the most hated and despised. Their work was disturbing, and many villains, he included, had tried to kill their members in the past. A few months ago, Hades had finally destroyed the group. Shiro had personally gone and given their members a slow, brutal death that left their bodies unrecognizable. Well, during mine and Deku's time at Hades, there was a skirmish between the two groups involving children being kidnapped and then rescued. During the rescue mission, Deku, in the heat of the moment, killed an assailant because he was about to kill one of the kids. Stain was stunned at what he had just learned. He knew Razor wasn't lying, she would never lie about something like this, but for once he wished she was. He genuinely liked Deku, and he didn't want him to be a killer, especially at his age. Those events, they triggered something in Deku, they awakened something in him, Razor murmured, her voice sounding sadder than before. I saw it when he was fighting Shiro. The state he was in, the pain and humiliation he was being forced to endure, it activated something within him. When Shiro was distracted by that explosion I set up and Deku took out his eye, that boy, he wasn't aiming to wound Shiro. Oh no. He was trying to kill him. Hades. The pit. Kendo walked towards the pit, where most of the hand-to-hand fights were taking place. The shouts of spectators and the competitors could be heard in the distance. Mustard was trailing alongside her. You know this is a really bad idea, right? Mustard muttered. Maybe, Kendo murmured. But I don't see you trying to stop me. Why are you even following me? I'll have you know I'm going along so things don't spiral out of control, he countered fiercely. And how exactly are you going to do that once I'm inside that cage? Kendo asked. Mustard shut up briefly. She had a point. If it gets chaotic, I'll hold my breath and use my quirk. That should knock everyone out, he decided. After that, we make a run for it. Kendo's eyebrows furrowed. Why are you so willing to help me? She inquired. Last time we met you tried to kill me and my friend. I wasn't trying to kill you, Mustard corrected. Stop you sure, but not kill you. I'm not a good person, but I'm no murderer. Kendo shot him a look. You shot us. I was only aiming to incapacitate you, Mustard shrugged. The gun can kill, but it depends on where the bullet lands. If I had aimed for your head you would have died, but any other part would have been fine. With the metal guy, Tetsu I think his name was, I only shot at his gas mask. Given his quirk, he wasn't at any risk from headshots. Besides, I have a very good aim. Whatever, you still attacked my classmates, Kendo argued. True, Mustard agreed. It was an order. We were just supposed to capture Katsuki Bakugo and nothing else. Personally, I didn't want to do it since I don't like his personality. Kendo stared at him unsure of whether or not he was telling the truth. Look Kendo, I get you don't like me, and it's fine if you don't want to forgive me or anything, but can we let bygones be bygones? It was months ago, and I heard your classmates came out mostly unscathed. Kendo stopped walking and stared at him. She didn't trust him, and she wasn't over what went down at the training camp. Still, he could be a useful ally in the future. I'll think about it, was the only answer she gave. It wasn't a no which was good enough for Mustard. As they got closer to the pit Kendo's thoughts began to drift towards Midoriya, UA's resident villain. Like the others, she was surprised when she found out who he was and who he worked for. However, she couldn't bring herself to hate him. She didn't fully understand why. Maybe it was because he hadn't been involved in the training camp incident, or maybe he had done something about Nito's attitude. As she was being honest with herself, which she was, she didn't think he was a bad person. A little aggressive and authoritative perhaps, but not bad. She'd even spared with him on one occasion in the gym, and he'd given her some pointers on her stance and attacks. She couldn't understand how someone like him could become a villain, although she did suspect there was more to it. Speaking of which, she briefly considered asking Mustard about Midoriya since they were from the same group. They must have spoken at some point. Maybe he knew about what happened here at Hades. Those questions she pushed aside for the time being as they arrived at the pit. It was packed with several individuals standing around it shouting as the two combatants were fighting. Well, fighting might not have been the correct word in this case. Beating down, that was more accurate, as Kendo watched the devil hero, Akuma, mercilessly punch his opponent while his face bled. He's still doing that, Kendo thought. During the tour earlier, they had all stopped by the pit. Akuma had been fighting another competitor in the same fashion. Yumi explained who he was and what he was doing here. The man acknowledged their presence by glaring at them briefly before turning his attention towards the fight. With his opponent knocked out, the winner is none other than Akuma, the announcer shouted. There were a collective amount of cheers and groans, which Kendo assumed was from people either winning or losing a bet. Akuma didn't appear to care though, since he walked out of the ring and grabbed a towel and water. What's this? Has Akuma had enough? The announcer yelled. Fuck you. The pro yelled back. I'm just taking a break, that's all. I'll be back later. So, if you want to send in any of these weak little assholes in to fight, go right ahead. The announcer didn't get a chance to reply as someone already jumped into the ring. This person was a little above Kendo's height, possessed long blonde hair that went down to his waist, golden yellow eyes, visible muscles that proved he worked out. In addition, he wore a red sleeveless t-shirt, white trousers, and white shoes. He was quite handsome as well. I, Kitamura, would like to compete, he addressed the audience in a confident, and from what she could see, smug manner. Does anyone object? When no one said anything, he just smiled. Well, in that case, he's my first opponent. Please shout if you would like the honor of fighting me. Akuma scowled. He really hated Kitamura. That arrogant attitude of his made him want to punch the man all the time. There was also the fact that they never fought. Kitamura made up the most bullshit excuses like I feel too faint, or I had a bad day, so I'm not really in the mood. He knew the real reason though. Kitamura was too scared of him to even make a move. The man was fully aware that Akuma was stronger than him, and that if they fought, he would lose. He was nothing but a fucking coward, and Akuma hated him for it. Several of Hades' members were about to shout they wanted a chance when the sound of the gate closing drew their attention back. Moving towards Kitamura was Kendo with a determined look on her face. I would like to be your opponent if that's alright, Kendo declared. For a few seconds, no one said anything. Kitamura stared at her blankly before bursting out laughing. Hahaha. Very funny, sweetheart. That one made my day. Kitamura chuckled. Kendo glared at him, already disliking him. I'm serious. I'd like to be your opponent. Kitamura just laughed harder, much to Kendo's fury. Was he looking down on her because she was a girl, or because she was a teenager? Yeah, and I'd like 12 bottles of French red wine. Look girly, this isn't something a young maiden like yourself should be doing, Kitamura mocked. You're too delicate after all. Why, if you were to fight me you would end up breaking something. I can assure you, Kendo growled, her anger rising. I wouldn't be the one leaving this cage with something broken. The Hades members, Mustard included, were impressed with Kendo's spirit. Kitamura still wasn't taking her seriously. That's right, because if you walk out here right now, he started. Shut the fuck up and fight. Akuma interrupted from the sidelines. The girl says she wants to fight, so fight. Stop being such a fucking pussy and get on with it. Kitamura shot him a glare before compassing himself. I suppose I shouldn't have expected anything less from you, Akuma, Kitamura said softly. You have left many with bruises and broken bones, including female competitors. Could you not show some restraint, especially with such delicate flowers? Delicate flowers? Akuma shot him a look of disbelief. You saying women are weak? Kitamura scoffed. Well, against males such as you and myself, of course. Kendo had officially decided that she hated this man. Not only was not taking her seriously, but he was also misogynistic. Never in all her life had she wanted to big fist someone as much as she did now. Let me give you a little life lesson, you pop a stick, Akuma snarled. Women are not weak against guys like us. They are capable of about as much as we are. And regarding the state I leave my opponents in, you're right, I do that to people, women included. However, I treat women the same way as I do men. Whether it's their gender, appearance, orientation, quirk status, or height, I'm not gonna treat them differently. If you don't like that, well then piss off, because this world isn't for little boys like you. Kitamura glared at him, hatred burning in his eyes. Akuma returned with his own. Is there any rule against me competing? Kendo asked the announcer. There are rules against children 12 and under fighting, but since you're a teenager, and a student at a hero school to boot, there's no issue, he answered. Kitamura was getting annoyed with Kendo and her behavior. It was unbecoming of a lady her age. Now listen here, he began as his hand stretched out towards Kendo. Kendo, having had enough of his attitude, grabbed his wrist and twisted it, causing Kitamura to yelp in pain. She then pulled him forward and punched him square in the jaw. She put a bit more strength into it than she planned, because Kitamura was sent back into the wall of the cage. He spit out a bit of blood and looked up at her in shock. He wasn't the only one. The entire audience had gone quiet. Mustard was surprised at her strength. She said she had learned how to fight before entering UA, maybe this is what she meant. Kendo's expression was downright murderous and pissed off. As Akuma said, "Shut the fuck up and fight," she growled. No one noticed, but at that moment the tiniest of smiles briefly crept across Akuma's face. This was going to be interesting. Class 1AB. The students of Class 1AB stared at the three individuals in front of them. These were the big three, UA's best and strongest students. The shining lights of UA's students that burn brightest through the dark, Fumikage murmured amazed. The ones closest to pro heroes among us, Momo continued. I've heard about them, but Jiro started. I know. Looking at them at first glance you wouldn't think it, Nito admitted. Looks can be deceiving, Izuku warned. Very deceiving. Well, he knew he should have paid attention to all of them, but his sole attention was on the blonde at the left. He thought he looked familiar before, but now he was certain. This year, and the last, he had seen him at the sports festival on TV. Even though he had only gone to the first year events, Sensei asked him to look at the third year, since they would be heroes by the end of the year. This boy was one of them. He hadn't ranked very high, but he left quite the impression when he was left completely naked on the course. Izuku wasn't certain, but from what he's seen of him, that boy's quirk involved phasing through solid matter. And if he added that with what he saw at the sports festival, it was possible that it only worked for his physical body, not his clothes. The other two hadn't done much to stand out either, but from what he remembered, the boy could change parts of his body into different types of animals, and the girl could manipulate energy from her body to a degree, and use it to move around better. Giro stared at them with sad eyes. UA's strongest, huh? The closest to pros if not already stronger. I bet they could have beaten their opponents if they were at the mall. The memory of how easily they had been defeated at the mall weighed heavily on Jiro. She had never felt so weak in her life. It was another situation she'd been useless in, just like the training camp. Izuku was wary of these people, especially the blonde. That guy came looking for him personally to meet with him. Why? What did he have to gain? Okay, can you please introduce yourselves briefly? Aizawa requested. Let's start with Amajiki. The dark-haired one called Amajiki faced forward and gave them all an intensified stare, which seemed to get stronger at a passing minute. 4 out of the 5 students flinched his stare. This intensity, what is it? Fumikage thought. Is he trying to intimidate us? Nito wondered. Well, it's definitely working. The only one that wasn't affected was the green-eyed villain who appeared bored by the attempt. This is him trying to intimidate us. Pathetic. Izuku decided. I've experienced far worse. The stare lasted for 2 seconds longer before all Amajiki could see were potatoes where their heads should have been. He couldn't take it anymore. Izuku noticed the teen was trembling and had an uncomfortable look on his face. It's no good, he exclaimed. Mirio, Hato. Even if I look out on them imagining that they're potatoes, everything other than their heads remains human. I still can't see them as anything other than human. His voice was incredibly anxious, and he was trembling even more than before. What should I do? I can't say anything, his eyes clouded. My mind's blank. I can't. He turned away and shoved his head into the wall. I want to go home. While most of the students were baffled by his behavior, Izuku gave him a sympathetic look. He's got anxiety issues. Poor guy, Izuku thought. I feel bad about calling him pathetic before. Maybe some sessions with Hound Dog would do him some good. Oh, Amajiki. That's called having the heart of a flea. The girl, Hato, explained cheerfully. Even though you're human. It's so strange. She then turned her attention to Class 1 AB. This the flea, Tamaki Amajiki. I'm Nijire Hato. We were asked to talk to you about work studies, due to what happened yesterday. She scanned the room quickly before forming a confused expression. Isn't this supposed to be Class 1A? If that Monoma from Class 1B is here, does that mean you classes have combined and become Class 1AB? She asked, indicating to Nito when she said this. Nito flicked his hair back in a dramatic fashion. By what a complicated, he started before Nijire cut him off. Hey Jiro, are those really earphone jacks in your ears? Would they hurt if I pulled on them or would they extend? Nejire asked. Nito's character froze and turned white. They only extend if, Jiro began. Hey Yorozu, is it true that when you use your quirk it ruins your clothes? Does that mean if you used it now your uniform would be ruined? Jiro felt a surge of annoyance. Why even bother asking her in the first place? You're right, but, Momo tried to say. Hey Tokoyami, are you really a bird? How come you don't have wings? Okay, everyone was starting to get a little frustrated by her behavior, teachers included. Aizawa was glaring daggers at her. Also, what about Dark Shadow? Does he have his own personality? Does he do what you want or just what he wants? Ooh, can he do tricks? Tokoyami muttered. However, Midoriya once again changed her attention again, this time to Izuku. Hey, you Midoriya, aren't you? A former member of the League of Villains? She questioned. Izuku answered Midoriya's question with a hard glare. He'd only known her a few minutes, and already he didn't like her. Former member? He was still a member. That did not and would not change. How dare this girl assume otherwise? What did you do for them? Did you fight heroes? Did you do crazy experiments? Did you live and do all your work on a secret island owned by your boss? That one made no sense. Well, tell me. Fuck off. Izuku snapped, surprising her. What I did is my business and no one else's. At that point, he unleashed some of his killing intent, causing others in the room to flinch. You are here to talk about your past work experiences, not ask useless questions you won't even let us answer. So, get on with it. I have had a really stressful couple of days, scratch that I've had a stressful life. So, believe me, I am not in the mood for childish behavior. A dark aura surrounded Izuku. Get on with it, or so help me, I will drag you over to the door and literally throw you out. Do I make myself clear? The room, minus Lad and Aizawa, was frightened and intimidated by Izuku. Or at least that's how it seemed. Wow, that's so cool, Midoriya exclaimed with a bright smile on her face. How are you releasing pressure like that? Izuku was taken back. She wasn't affected by his killing intent in the slightest. Shit, that normally works, he inwardly groaned. Also, where's that darkness around you coming from? She continued. My soul. He snarled, hoping to scare her. It had the opposite effect. Really? That's amazing. Can anyone do it? She inquired. Izuku stared at her, completely dumbfounded. The killing intent and aura having all but vanished. Seriously, what is wrong with this girl? Dark Shadow asked incredulously. She's really cheerful and energetic, Tokoyami suggested. Understatement of the year. The sentient quirk responded sarcastically. I'm sorry. There's just so much I want to know about all of you. It's so strange. Aizawa and Vlad had both had enough and were now glaring at Mirio, with auras of their own appearing. Isn't this lacking in rationality? Aizawa interrogated. This isn't why we called you guys in, you know. Vlad added darkly. Don't worry, erase your head, Vlad King. Mirio answered quickly while sweating slightly and waving his hand. I'm going last to wrap things up, right? The two didn't look convinced, but decided to let him move on. Mirio leaned slightly and placed his elbow on Aizawa's desk. It was time for his big game changer to lift the mood of this class. The future's gonna be, Mirio announced with enthusiasm that could rival All Might's. There was silence. He was being given blank stares by the students in front of him. Izuku concluded that he wanted them to answer. Gonna be what? Nito muttered, confused. Grim, that's what you're supposed to say, right? Mirio countered with a bright smile. Alright, my call and response was a huge failure. Izuku looked at Mirio with disbelief. Was this guy serious? Also, Grim. Who uses Grim anymore? This wasn't a comic book. All three of them are kind of weird, Nito muttered. Even though they're the big three, it's like. You can feel it in their personalities, Fumikage stated. If you say so, Dark Shadow added. You all look like you don't know what's going on, right? Mirio pointed out. We're third years who suddenly appear to talk about fighting villains from internships when there are bigger issues at hand. That's confusing, right? Izuku didn't think so. Not the way you're thinking of, earning the blonde's attention. UA was broken into right after getting security improvements and losing multiple students at once. To top it off, this was done by the same group on the same day. Therefore, it only stands to reason that they would want UA's strongest to speak with us about fighting villains. Though your words are questionable since we don't know whether the villains you fought were small fry or legitimate threats. Tamaki gazed at Izuku from the corner of his eye. So far, he seemed like the most intelligent one here. Then again, being a villain himself, he would probably be able to tell the difference between who was dangerous and who wasn't. Mirio was left even more interested by Izuku, or as others called him, Deku. He wondered how Sir would get along with him. Gee, when you put it like that, you do have a point, Mirio agreed. The villains we fought might have been strong, but they also might have been weak. If that were the case, then I guess that makes us weak too. You said it, not me, Izuku inwardly pointed out. Yet, why do I get the feeling you're plotting something else? You're all first years, yet you've been many battles with villains, he cast a glance at Izuku. And heroes. This year's first years are really energetic, right? Besides, it looks like my jokes didn't work earlier. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Tamaki and Midoriya stared at Mirio with wide eyes. They knew where he was going with this. Raising his arm, he shouted, "Why don't you all fight me at once?" The second he said that, there were shouts of surprise, protest, and confusion. Is this why he didn't engage me before? Izuku wondered. Because it would involve an illegal fight on campus. It's the most rational to have you experience our experience firsthand, right? Mirio addressed the teachers. How about it, senseis? Vlad remained indifferent, but Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Do what you want. With that, it was decided to meet at Gym Gamma. Costumes weren't required, only PE uniforms. Before they could head out, Nito interrupted them with a surprising request. "Hey sensei," he called out. "Yes, what is it?" Vlad asked. "Since we're low on numbers, would it be alright if I invited Shinso to participate?" Nito requested. Aizawa's interest was piqued. "May I ask why?" Nito stared at the ground. "I know he's not the strongest physically, but intellectually he's quite good. And his quirk, it's powerful. Look what it did last night." Aizawa and Vlad couldn't deny it. Hitachi had been very helpful in taking down Blade last night, he may be able to do it again. "I know he's not in the hero course, but it will be a good experience for him," Nito pressed. "Fighting with stronger opponents. And unless I'm mistaken, there's no rule forbidding a student from another course taking part in another course's class, unless the teacher says otherwise." Aizawa smirked. "That's as good a reason as any, I suppose. Very well then, send him a message to be at Gym Gamma in 30 minutes fully dressed." Nito nodded and started typing on his phone. Aizawa was pleased. He's been wanting to get a better look at Hitachi's abilities for a while now to see if there was anything that could be improved and maybe learned. Izuku was also pleased. Hitachi would give them the edge they needed. Gym Gamma. Everyone was fully dressed and stood waiting at Gym Gamma. Mirio was doing stretches while everyone was preparing in their own way. Hitachi had been surprised when he got a message from Nito asking him to take part. He didn't know how much use he would be, but he doubted he'd get a chance like this again. A chance to show people what he could really do. "Mirio, you probably shouldn't," Tamaki murmured to the wall, but could still be heard. "For work studies, it would have been enough for us to say, this is how it was, and I learned a lot from it. Not everyone is filled to the brim with ambition. We can't end up with kids who are unable to recover after this." That both intrigued and concerned the students. "What does he mean by that?" Momo asked. "I'd say he's underestimating us, but I seriously doubt it," Nito suggested. Not with that look in his eyes. Izuku turned to him. "So, you realized it too?" Nito nodded in confirmation. Hitachi seemed to understand as well. "Ah, I get it now. What are you guys talking about?" Jiro asked, confused. "Just look at him," Nito said, motioning towards Mirio. "He challenged us all at the same time with a completely straight face. He didn't say it in a condescending tone, meaning he's taking us seriously. Not only that, but he's also certain of his victory, numbers be damned." "He's right," Izuku stated. "Tagata might seem goofy, but he's not stupid. He wouldn't make a challenge like this, unless he was sure he could win. No one would. Remember when my group attacked the USJ?" The others nodded, not understanding why he was bringing this up now. "I went there for my own reasons, but Tomura went there to kill All Might. Despite what you might think of him, he is not stupid. He didn't attempt such a feat thinking it would be a measly effort. He did it with a plan, and the belief he would actually succeed, because he had someone who was just as strong as All Might with him." Aizawa shuddered at the memory of Nomu. How easily it defeated him. How broke his bones with relative ease. "Whatever he's planning, he knows he can win," Izuku finished. "So, be on your guards." No one questioned him. If what Izuku and Nito were saying was true, then Mirio was obviously more dangerous than he was letting on. "You guys can come from anywhere at any time," Mirio informed them. "So, who's up first?" Izuku immediately stepped forward. "I'd like to go first if that's alright. Any objections?" Mirio waved his head in denial, which was good enough for him. Aizawa and Vlad both shouted that this would be a good experience for them, and to make the most of it. "Problem child." Mirio addressed Izuku. "That's good. You're really energetic." Izuku took up a fighting stance, while the others got their quirks out and ready. Nito touched and copied several quirks to use at his disposal. "He's strong, I can feel it," Izuku pondered. "But I wouldn't go down easily. So, bring it on." Without further ado, the battle between UA's first years and the strongest began. Izuku dashed towards Mirio at a speed that surprised everyone. He leapt forward and aimed a spinning kick towards Mirio's face. While doing so, Mirio kept on smiling as his clothes started to fall off. Jiro let out a scream and covered her eyes while blushing profusely. The others either had shocked expressions or were gawking. "His clothes came off," Nito exclaimed. "Oh, excuse me, the fine-tuning is tricky," Mirio apologized while trying to put on his pants. Izuku continued with his assault undeterred by the scene. It wasn't anything he hadn't seen before. His kick went through Mirio's head. "I was right, his quirk is phasing, though his clothes aren't affected," Izuku realized. "That's a tricky quirk, especially since you can't tell when it's activated." "You went for the face, huh?" Mirio murmured. Izuku attacked him again by releasing several punches and kicks which all went through Mirio. Mirio launched a punch of his own which Izuku tried to block only for Mirio's entire arm to go through his hand. When the fist reached his face, it was physical and strong. Izuku was sent flying back with his feet skidding across the ground. Before he could even blink, Mirio was on him in an instant and delivered a hard punch to his stomach. Izuku gasped from the pain and was barely able to stand. That really hurt, he felt like he could vomit at any second. Mirio on the other hand was impressed. "Ha, normally that would be an instant knockout, but you're still standing. You're strong," Mirio complimented while Izuku glared at him. I like you. Before he could continue, he was interrupted by a wave of sound hitting him, or at least it looked like it. Mirio, who was still blushing, launched her own attack, while there was a bit of distance between Mirio and Izuku. They couldn't let him do all the fighting. Still, why do his clothes have to come off? Even his underwear? She agonized over. When her attack cleared, Mirio was nowhere to be seen. Izuku understood what had really happened though. Mirio, he's aiming for behind you, Izuku shouted as a warning. No sooner had he said it, Mirio popped out of the ground from behind, again completely naked, causing Jiro to scream. Close your eyes and fire, Nito shouted. Normally he wouldn't suggest such a brash and risky move, but they couldn't afford to hold back. Jiro, on instinct, did what she was told and fired again, only for Mirio to disappear beneath the ground once more. What is this? A warping quirk? Momo asked incredulously. It can't be, Hitachi argued. You saw how he disappeared through the ground. His quirk involves phasing. Who's to say he can't control his movement and speed while doing it? Aizawa smirked at Hitachi's deduction. He was analytical and cautious. Hitachi, meanwhile, knew he had to act. He couldn't just stand there doing nothing. He glanced at Izuku, who nodded back. They didn't know if Mirio knew about his quirk, but now was as good a time as any to find out. Mirio sprung from his hiding place, this time behind Tokoyami. Why the hell are you fighting us naked? He asked. He didn't know why, it was just the first thing that came into his head. Sorry, it's, Mirio started before his eyes went blank. The brainwashing had been successful. Not wanting to waste this chance, Fumikage and Ito, with his copied version, unleashed a dark shadow strike at full power that sent Mirio flying. Jiro followed up with her own sonic attack that was successful in hitting this time. Mirio was sent crashing into the wall. The dust made it hard to see, but there was no sign he was standing. We did it, Jiro murmured. Tamaki and Ijaya were stunned that Mirio had been successfully hit. They couldn't even remember the last time something like that had happened. They turned their gazes to Hitachi, who was the sole reason. They didn't know how, but he did something. It must have been his quirk, whatever that was. Vlad was very impressed. He had seen how strong Mirio was, and he'd never been hurt once. He glanced towards Nito, who was panting heavily. He could see why he asked for Hitachi now. Aizawa was the same. He legitimately thought they would all be knocked out instantly, but they proved him wrong. He stared at Hitachi, who looked relieved. That boy had so much potential, yet it was going to waste. During the sports festival, he had taken a personal interest in Hitachi. He was the only Gen Ed student who made it to the final rounds of the sports festival. He was also the only student, excluding Hatsume, his quirk wasn't combat-orientated. Despite bandages covering his body, Aizawa could see that drive within the boy to become a hero. It had been the same as his when he was a student at UA. Like Hitachi, he had been a part of general education, and he had to fight his way through the sports festival in order to gain acceptance to the hero course. After the last sports festival, he had wanted Hitachi in the hero course, but his proposal had been shut down for the reasons he told Midoriya. Others' reasons, not his. Looking back on it now, he realized he should have fought harder to get him in. The only reason Hitachi had failed the entrance exam was that his quirk wasn't suited to battling opponents like robots, which was pathetic. Aizawa had always believed the entrance exam was irrational, because people with quirks like his and Hitachi's usually got left out. He had, of course, argued about it with Nezu for years, but unfortunately, and as much as he hated to admit it, an examination that accommodated everyone was difficult to conceive. Perhaps it's not too late. Maybe I could mentor him, even Aizawa pondered. He had considered it before, especially after he found out about Hitachi's situation. Aizawa despised bullying and was furious that this had been going on for a while. Being bullied because others decided his quirk made him a villain. As if they had a right to decide that. Ow, came Mirio's voice. That really hurt. You first years really are something, right? The students couldn't believe their eyes as Mirio stood up smiling. He's still standing after that. They all mentally screamed. Mirio wasn't entirely sure how they'd managed to hit him, but he knew Hitachi was responsible. He groaned while flexing his muscles. He hadn't come out unscathed. Those attacks left his body sore while his ears were ringing. He needed to finish this, and fast. Spreading his arms out, he disappeared beneath the ground again. The students prepared themselves, but Mirio was going all out this time. Moving faster than before, he appeared beside Hitachi, and delivered a hard punch to his stomach that left him on the ground gagging. He then moved quickly to do it on Momo and Jiro, who were left in a similar state. They'll be out for a little while, Izuku thought. Those punches of his are no joke. I'm only still standing because of the training I've gone through. If I hadn't, I would be where they are. He looked down at Momo. Don't worry, Yoirozu. I won't let what you've given me go to waste. During the other's assault, Momo had thrown him something she thought would be very useful. Fumikage and Nito attempted to use Dark Shadow as armor, but it was no match for Mirio's strength. All it took was 3 punches each and they were out. Power. Mirio yelled. That left Izuku on his own to face UA's strongest student. But he wouldn't back down, not now. Mirio Tagata, Aizawa murmured. To my knowledge, he's the closest to being number 1, including the pros, Vlad added. Izuku stared at him defiantly. Mirio couldn't help but admire the look in his eyes. What are you waiting for? Come at me. Izuku challenged. Wasting no more time, Mirio disappeared again. However, this time it was Izuku who was prepared. Swinging his leg back, he aimed where Mirio came up. The latter was surprised Izuku predicted his movements, but that didn't stop him. Mirio's arm phased through Izuku's leg, and 2 of his fingers were headed straight for Izuku's eyes. But here's an ultimate move, Mirio declared. Blinder touch eyeball crush. As his fingers came closer, Izuku on reflex was about to close his eyes. Don't ever shut your eyes. A familiar voice in his head shouted. That voice in the spilled second caused Izuku to have a flashback to his time at Hades. Flashback. Izuku was sweating profusely. He'd been doing well in this sparring match so far, but things had quickly turned serious. The red spear came closer to his left eye. Izuku, on reflex, closed it. Don't ever shut your eyes. The pro hero yelled. In an instant, Izuku felt a strong blow towards his stomach that caused him to gag and sent him crashing to the ground. When he tried to get up, he was pinned to the ground and had a spear inch above his throat. Looking up, he saw a very angry Kuchulin glaring down at him. That's right. It was Ireland's former No.1 hero, having a sparring match again. Kuchulin continued to glare at him. Why did you close your eyes? Izuku shot him an incredulous look. Your spear was centimeters from impaling my eye. And? Kuchulin replied. Do you think I would have actually gone through with it? It was reflex, Izuku defended. Kuchulin sighed and stood up, offering a hand to Izuku, who graciously accepted. Believe me, you would know if I was going to, he defended. I can't exactly explain it. When someone tries to do that, you can tell whether they're serious or not. You can see it in their eyes. That made no sense to Izuku. Besides, even if you close your eye, you're still going to get stabbed, so what's the point? Izuku didn't know how to answer that one. Kuchulin did have a point. Still, wasn't it only natural to react like that? Kuchulin seemed to know what he was thinking. Right now, you're thinking, isn't it only natural to react like that, aren't you? He said in a bored tone. Izuku felt his insides freeze and he stared at the pro horrified. Why was he so easy for people to read? You're also wondering why you're so easy for people to read. Izuku performed an anime fall, much to Kuchulin's amusement. It's because of your facial expression, it's quite easy to read, Kuchulin explained. Izuku silently cursed for being so obvious. Back to the topic at hand, when you're in battle, don't ever close your eyes, he instructed. If you do, you're basically inviting the opponent to attack you because they know you won't be able to counter what you can't see. I guess, Izuku admitted. If I don't close my eyes, what do I do? Try to dodge or block it. Kuchulin contemplated his answer. He couldn't just take this one lightly. Either is fine, whichever one helps you come out unscathed, Kuchulin answered. Izuku thought the response was a bit vague, but he didn't question it. The man was more of an expert in this field than he was after all. Though when you know if they're actually trying to kill you or not, try to go along with it, Kuchulin continued. If someone is unwilling to kill you, use that to your advantage. Izuku gave him a confused look. Like small-time thugs or pro-heroes, for instance. Izuku's expression quickly changed from confused to surprise. That was unusual advice to be giving, especially to someone like him. Kuchulin wasn't stupid or naive. He knew exactly who he was and what he was. Are you sure you should be giving advice like that to someone like me? Izuku asked nervously. The hero frowned. Because you're a villain. Izuku nodded, causing him to sigh. Do you honestly think I care about that sort of thing? Villain or not, you're a teenager in a dangerous place. You'll need all the skills you can acquire to survive. Alright, I get it, Izuku agreed, knowing he couldn't argue. Thanks. No problem, Kuchulin shrugged. Besides, it's not such a bad trick to use. Most heroes will be willing to hurt you, but not to the point where it involves removing a body part. Izuku shivered at the idea. He knew a lot of heroes were willing to either burn or break their enemies' bones, but mutilation, they weren't that extreme. Can we go again? Izuku requested. This time I promise I won't close my eyes. If you say so. Just don't be an idiot about it this time, Kuchulin told him. Izuku blinked confused. The Jai-tu, he tried pronouncing. What's that? Is it an English word? I've never heard of it. Kuchulin laughed. It wasn't the first time he'd gotten that response, and it wouldn't be the last. It's a word we use in my country, Kuchulin explained. I don't know the Japanese word, but in English, it's idiot. Izuku furrowed his eyebrows. Kuchulin used a lot of terms from Ireland he had never heard of, or at least sounded strange to him. Not that he minded or anything. One or two sounded funny even. Baka, Izuku responded, much to Kuchulin's confusion. That's the Japanese word for idiot. Kuchulin laughed, and the two started their sparring match with the pro, promising he wouldn't take out his eye. He also said Izuku was unlikely to do the same to anyone else. That man, at the time, he had no idea. Flashback end. Mirio's fingers were incredibly close to Izuku's eyes. However, Izuku didn't close them, he kept them wide open, an act which surprised Mirio. Odd, most people would close their eyes when I do this, he thought. In that case. He continued with his attack with his arm about to phase through Izuku, when he turned his head away and dropped his body to the ground. Mirio turned his own body and attempted to deliver a strong punch to Izuku's stomach. However, this time he was met with surprise as what he felt wasn't a soft surface, but a tight one. Izuku had caught his hand as his fist materialized. It's almost impossible to tell when you're using your quirk, almost, Izuku taunted. What I could tell was where you were aiming to hit. Mirio was briefly stunned and impressed at what Izuku had said, but didn't get a chance to dwell on it, as the boy tightened his grip and pulled away trying to take Mirio with him. Mirio phased again and attempted to punch Izuku a second time, only for Izuku to use his free hand to push himself, via the ground, away. Mirio came after him, but Izuku was ready this time. He flipped up and threw the very thing Momo had thrown him before she was taken out. A Russian Matryoshka nesting doll. Mirio blinked confused as the small doll came crashing to the ground. The second it did, an explosion of light occurred, forcing Mirio to close his eyes. Not wanting to waste this chance, Izuku moved forward and kicked at Mirio's legs, calling him to fall to the ground. He then jumped over and attempted to kick Mirio's back, only for the man to phase again. Damn it. Izuku silently cursed. What's it going to take to beat this guy? Hahaha, Mirio inwardly chuckled. You're really something, Midoriya. I haven't been on the edge like this in a while. It's been a privilege to fight you and your classmates. If possible, I'd like to speak with you after this. However, like all good things, this must come to an end. Mirio came out of the ground and raced towards Izuku at a much faster pace. He then leapt out of the ground, prepared to punch him again. Since it's come to this, I've got no choice, Izuku decided. Killing intent. Max. Izuku unleashed a powerful wave of killing intent that left everyone, including the teachers, frozen. Izuku was shaking somewhat while doing this as well. Something like this wasn't that easy. For some reason though, Mirio continued his advancement towards him unaffected. What? Why isn't it working? He wondered. Too late to move, Mirio's fists connected with his stomach in a much more powerful fashion. Izuku bent down and gagged in agony, only for Mirio to deliver a straight uppercut that sent Izuku flying into the air. Eyes completely blank. He crashed to the ground, eyes still open but unable to move. The students who participated were shocked that he'd been defeated. They were just starting to stand up from earlier. Is he alright? Hitachi called out, concerned. Mirio grinned. He's fine. Hitachi activated his quirk on instinct, and for the second time in a row, Mirio was placed under his control. Nobody touches him, Hitachi warned. He'll be like that for a few minutes. Just grab Midoriya and keep away from him. No sooner had he said it was Momo and Fumikage going to pull their classmate away. Once Izuku was with them, they contemplated what to do next. They were all too tired to fight, and Izuku was in no perfect condition either. Alright you lot, I think that's enough, Vlad interrupted, walking up to them alongside Aizawa. Their expression was completely neutral. We've seen all we needed to see, and so have you, from what I can tell. He wasn't wrong. You did a good job out there. You didn't exactly win, but you didn't lose either. At least as far as I could see. You all worked together and adapted to your situation to the best of your abilities, especially you, Aizawa said, indicating to Hitachi. You took out someone whose abilities rival a pro with very little experience. Very impressive. Hitachi's face reddened at the praise. It was unusual for him, yet it felt good. Maybe his quirk wasn't so bad after all. A few minutes later, after everyone had recovered and Mirio was unbrainwashed, the big three faced the students and offered their congratulations. Mirio was especially impressed with them. He also apologized to the girls for seeing his naked form. Izuku had something he wanted to ask him. Hey Tagata, he addressed. Your quirk, when you use it, what do you feel? Mirio's eyes widened. Can you feel anything, see anything at all? Can you even breathe? Mirio waved his head. Well now, this is a surprise. You've got to be the first person who's ever figured it out. My quirk permeation, when fully activated, lets me go through everything, including the ground. Well, it looks like I'm going into the ground, it's actually me falling. And then when I release my quirk, something strange happens. Apparently, things that have mass can't overlap, so I get repelled. I get repelled to the surface in an instant. Izuku's eyes widened. So that's what it was. You weren't warping at all. You were controlling the angle of your mass and releasing it in the direction you wanted to move around. Mirio nodded in confirmation. That's right. So, you can avoid all the attacks and move wherever you want in an instant. That's quite a powerful quirk, Momo acknowledged. Mirio waved his head again. No, I made it into a strong quirk. As Midoriya said, I can't feel or see anything. I can't even breathe. When activated, my lungs can't take in oxygen, vibrations go through my eardrums and light through my retinas. I literally go through everything. I just fall while I have mass. That's all, Mirio continued. That's why if I want to go through a wall, I activate everything but one leg, then I release the other leg and land on it and activate my other leg and go through. Even for a simple action like that, there are a couple of steps involved, right? In other words, it's like controlled falling, Nito suggested. Mirio nodded. The students were impressed, to say the least. If they knew about that first, they might have assumed it wouldn't have done him any good. Something like that required a lot of control most people wouldn't have been able to achieve for years. With my quirk, I was always dead last. So, in order to get ahead, I had to be smarter and quicker than everyone else. Sometimes I had to be tricky. Above all, I had to be able to predict what would happen. And what made those predictions possible was experience. I built my predictions on what I knew. That is why I wanted to fight you all, to show you through experience rather than words. In work studies, we're not guests, we're either sidekicks or pros. I experienced a lot of things a pro would like: fear, and almost watching others die. And I built my predictions off of those. You could do the same, you just need experience, Mirio finished. Once he was finished, there was a round of applause from everyone including Izuku. Funny, his quirk situation isn't that different from Shiro's, Izuku thought. The third years said their goodbyes, while Mirio made plans to speak with Izuku later. He was definitely interested in him. He couldn't help but wonder if Sir Night Eye would be the same. Vlad and Aizawa requested to speak with Nito later, much to the latter's surprise. Hitachi, seeing that his purpose was fulfilled, returned to the dorm as did the others. However, the day wasn't finished yet, not for Izuku, and certainly not for Kendo. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.